Welcome back to Indomitable Interactive. Today I was going to do an indie highlight, but instead I had to talk about Mina the Hollower. This game has been on my wishlist since early 2022 and has had a release date of coming soon until this week. Mina the Hollower is being developed by Yacht Games, which, if you don't know, is the same developer that made Shovel Knight, which was, of course, a massive success. Nonetheless, I wanted to talk briefly about its new demo, so if you haven't had the time to play it, you can see what the game will be about. And if you haven't heard there was a demo, well, now you have. It's clear that this game is set out to emulate the art style of early handheld titles, especially Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. Specifically, Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening comes to mind. The game does a good job of this. It matches a similar feel for me that I would say feels like being kind of boxed in, because everything on the screen is fairly large and there isn't a ton of space to maneuver on the screen. This is by no means a bad thing for me. It was done in Game Boy games, I imagine, because the screen was very small, so having objects on screen be small as well would make them virtually impossible to see, especially on top of the fact that the screen was already difficult to see in many situations due to the lack of a backlight. Anyways, Mina the Hollower captures that feel, but it does not feel constricting or anything, simply just part of the art style. However, what I will say is that a lot of things can be hard to distinguish as important. At first, I found it a little difficult to discern what was a walkable path, a wall, or an object blocking my path. But maybe that's just me. What was probably definitely just me was completely missing the checkpoints. I maintain that they do not look particularly distinct, but I'm still surprised I didn't even try to interact with them for a time. I died a few times while missing like 3 checkpoints in a row, and I got sent back so ridiculously far I was genuinely frustrated about it and probably would have made it like half of this video until I realized that there were in fact checkpoints. Other things like barriers you can jump over and ledges that you automatically hop over don't seem to stand out all that much, but once you get past one you'll know what they are. It is a source of confusion early in the game, but it is remedied fairly quickly, and in a full game you'd probably forget all about it. This lack of discernibility is my chief complaint, and it's not even that bad, honestly. Only a few things felt like they weren't what they should be, or as easily recognizable as they should be. The gameplay itself was quite enjoyable for me. At the beginning of the demo, you can choose from 3 different weapons. I chose the mace whip thing. This seems like a good choice considering the range it has, but I'm not sure about the damage output compared to the other ones, as I really only played with this. I did go back and test the other 2 weapons, but only briefly. These would be daggers that have very short range but a pretty fast attack rate, and a warhammer that has a simple swipe and a charge up attack that I imagine does a lot of damage. This kind of customization right from the beginning is pretty cool. The main gimmick of the game is your ability to burrow underground. It allows you to go under certain obstacles, pick up rocks, find buried items, and it functions as a platforming mechanic as well. This is because you actually move faster when you are burrowing, and when you jump out of it, you actually jump farther than your normal jump. You can only be burrowed for a certain amount of time unless you're in a place you can't jump out of. Honestly, I am kind of split on this mechanic because I did not like it at first. I found it kind of jarring that you move at a different speed and jump a different amount. But once it introduced it as an actual platforming mechanic, I thought it was a good addition to the game that made traversing the map more interesting. So yes, initially I found it jarring, but once I got used to it, I liked it a lot. This game's third dimension does not just go down, but up as well. Obviously you can jump over things, as previously mentioned, but you can also attack in midair. There are items and enemies in the air that you can reach, so this adds another element to the gameplay that I like. The game has more to its combat and movement than I expected for a Game Boy style game, but I by no means find it overwhelming or too much. I think it works very well overall. Although I do like the movement mechanics, one aspect of the movement does feel a little off for me. This would be moving diagonally. You can, of course, walk diagonally, making the game kind of have 8-way directions, but at the same time it still only has 4-way directions. You can't actually face diagonally, which means you also can't attack diagonally. There are even a few sections in which you have to jump diagonally in order to progress, which I think emphasizes diagonal movement more than it should be emphasized in this case. Overall, I found it slightly annoying, but to be fair, this was pretty standard for the games this one is inspired by. Getting rid of diagonal movement would make the movement essentially be tile-based, which I do not think would be good, so I think fixing this would just require adding the ability to face and attack diagonally. Not being able to do so doesn't feel wrong or jarring to me, but it does make the combat feel a little slow sometimes, having to line up your shot each time, especially when an enemy is closing in on you, but not directly from in front of you. This is pretty much a nitpick. The following is also nitpicking. You stop when you attack. This is also fairly standard for a lot of retro games, but something that does annoy me slightly, especially in this game because there are so many destructible things in the environment. Destroying things just takes longer because I have to stop every time I use my weapon. Your burrowing ability is also bound to the same button as jump, you just do it by holding the button. This means that you always must jump before burrowing, which adds a significant delay between choosing to burrow and actually doing it. This is all minor nitpicking of the movement, but all of it combined does make me feel the need to say that while the movement is pretty good, it is certainly not perfect. Another aspect of the gameplay are secondary weapons. I only found 2 different ones, an axe that is thrown in an arc and has a small area of effect, and a dagger that is thrown forward, spins at the end for a second, and then comes back. I am unsure if there are more that I just didn't find, or if there are only 2 since it's just a demo. Nonetheless, they're a very normal feature, but add a good amount to the game. Without them, the combat would be pretty slow and boring. They use a consumable item that you can find throughout the game by destroying things and killing enemies. The devs definitely want you to use them a lot, since they give you tons of this item and you can't hold all that many at once. A few other things did confuse me a little bit, which would be the XP and the healing mechanic. The XP, called bones, is collected throughout the map. You can lose some of it when you die, but there are ways to convert bones to bone stone, which can be saved through death. Then you expend it on a level up to increase a stat, or store more bones as bone stone. At least, I think that is the gist of it. It probably is not that complicated, but it had me confused for a time. It was not really explained until I found a checkpoint and checked out the info on the bonestone converting machine. This took a while because I happened to miss a few checkpoints, as previously mentioned. Also, the healing mechanic. This seems pretty straightforward. You hurt enemies to fill your vials of plasma, which you can use to heal yourself. However, there are multiple vials that are expendable, which you get back at checkpoints. The vials filling also seems weirdly inconsistent to me. Like I will randomly have way more plasma than I feel like I should, or I feel like I have actively lost plasma without actually healing myself. I think this has something to do with the spark mechanic, but I never really figured out what exactly that was, and I do not think it was ever explained in any way, unless I just missed it entirely. I am all for games that teach you how to play with actual gameplay rather than just straight up telling you. However, I think there's a fine line between when you should do one or the other. You'll find that modern games usually just tell you how things work. When it's telling me something like hit space to jump or hit X to attack, this is useless. These are things to be expected, and I am going to spam every button or literally look at the control bindings to see everything I can do anyways. But for more complicated mechanics, telling me word for word in text is not such a bad thing when there is not an obvious way to teach it in game. I feel that the XP system is pretty much fine, but the healing vials and the spark mechanic are lost on me and left essentially unexplained. Maybe that's just because it's only a demo, or because I'm an idiot, but I do think that this system is a little more complicated than necessary, which would be fine if it were to be better explained. Overall though, I think the demo was pretty fun, and I'm looking forward to playing the full game. Its movement is not perfect, but you've probably noticed I will nitpick on pretty much every game's movement, as I find it the most important aspect of a game. It also has some mechanics that I do not think I fully understand, to be honest. Besides this, there is definitely a fantastic game underneath. Fun combat and destructible stuff, good platforming overall, a charming art style and music, weapon and stat customization, and the story, although limited in this demo, seems like it could shape up to be pretty good. I definitely recommend checking out the demo and seeing it for yourself. It's only around 45 minutes long. I look forward to a new banger from Yacht Club Games, and if you want to see the full demo playthrough uploaded, then just let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.